Taylor, great to see you, man. Welcome to Popternative.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be on.
You know, one of the coolest things I think about storytelling is diving into these massive, big scale worlds. I mean,
Yeah.
Wheel of Time, right? Check, right? Like,
Yeah, it's definitely that.
yeah. Take me through like getting on set for the first time for a season, like just like
Oh,
soaking it
yeah.
all in, like those sets, man, specifically.
Yeah, I mean, the sets are huge. Like, I don't think you can really appreciate it, honestly. I mean, you see it on screen and they look big on screen, but when you're there and the detail that goes into everything, Andre, our kind of our set designer who kind of creates the look of all of these different worlds that we have is so amazing.
Yeah.
And he just puts so much detail into every little thing. You walk in because there actually is so much detail, it doesn't always read on screen, but you're like, the books are there and they all have titles and they're all in like this whatever language that these characters would read and speak. They're not in English, and it's so fascinating. And all of the statues have like really detailed faces in the White Tower and in the two rivers. Almost all of those buildings have an inside, and when you're on a lot of sets, they're just like props and stuff like that, and like it's just also immersive.
Yeah.
And we do a lot of shooting on location, and that's great too. Some of the locations are amazing, but you don't really appreciate the work and the size and the scale that goes into the show until you're on one of our backlots or in one of our sets, and you're just like, wow,
Oh, it's
people really
insane.
care
Like
about
it's
this.
it's
Yeah.
crazy. And you know what's interesting, right? Because I always feel like there's this like ping pong match when you're making something that has original source material that came before it, right? Because
Yeah.
I feel like you can kind of use it as research, right? Or like you can kind of
Yeah.
throw it away. What is that like for you with the Wheel of Time book series? Because at the end of the day, you're gonna try to do the book justice and the fans of the book, but like this is
Yeah.
the Prime Video series. It's not the books, right? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, we try to do as much justice to the books as we absolutely possibly can, while also still remembering that we are making a television show and there are physical limitations to what we can do sometimes. And there's limitations on cast size, there's limitations on budget, all the things that come with making a TV show,
Yep.
no matter how big the scale is.
Yep.
And so for me, like taking that down as to being an actor, I have to know what the world is and I have to know the environment that I'm inhabiting. So I do read the books, but ultimately at the end of the day, my job is to play the character as it is written in the scripts for the
Yeah,
show
absolutely.
and play the scenes as they are in the show. So I have to be more faithful to that rather than try to make the character match whatever it is in the books, because that's quite different a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And so you have to always keep in mind that they're major book fans and we don't want to piss them off, and we want to honor their love and their time and their dedication to these book series. But also you have to keep in mind that there are a lot of people who are watching the show who haven't read the books and they're just exposed to this world through our show. We have to honor those fans as well. So it's a tricky balancing act that sometimes you get right, sometimes you get wrong, and you just sort of have to hope that people go with you.
Absolutely. I'm really excited to ask you this because I feel like you can think of a lot of scenes, but it's like, there are like big scenes in each season of Wheel of Time that just from a viewer perspective, I feel like those scenes alone took like a week to shoot sometimes. You know what I mean? Like, and everything. Do you ever feel like some of those big sequences feel like a show on its own compared to the other series? Like, that's interesting to think about, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, like the episode that just came out today, we shot that whole episode we did a month of shooting on that episode, specifically in that last half of the episode, the major battle sequence we shot for 3 weeks. And you feel like, I mean, when you're going in every day and shooting that, you feel like you're living in it.
Yeah.
And you feel like we're making a movie of just
and
this.
how much runtime is that when it gets to the edit? Like probably like what, like 8 minutes or like 10 minutes?
Or I mean, especially the major fight sequences, those actually are what really feel like it, because you have to, for me as an actor, in order to do them, I'm not a trained stuntman, and so I'm always going to be a little bit awkward if I don't think of what the story is through the fight. Like the characters, like what is the character thinking? Not just what they look like, but what are they doing?
Yeah.
Why are they doing all the moves that they're doing? And what's going through their head while they're fighting?
Yeah.
And so you have to make this big, huge kind of story in your head and in our monologue,
Yeah.
and then you see it in the edit, and you're like, "Oh, that lasted 5 seconds," and I spent 3 weeks rehearsing for it.
It's so funny to think about that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like I remember
yeah,
watching like Orange is the New Black on Netflix, and like I remember apparently some of those like prison scenes, they took those like 4 weeks, like a month to shoot. Like what you
yeah,
see for like 2 minutes. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah. You're like, it can often be kind of, I tell this
Ironic
to
if you
people,
think about it.
ironic, but it also, as an actor on a show, it can be quite discombobulating to watch the season once it's finished. Because
Yeah.
I obviously, like, I have to see the entire world from my character's perspective. And my character, for me, has to be the main character in the show, even if they're not the main character in the show, or whatever you're doing. And so when you go in and you watch the TV series, even though you've read the script, when you actually watch the TV series because you've lived through filming it, you're like, oh, right, all these other things were happening that I have no idea about that were going on, and you're like, oh, this is so much bigger than I thought it was when I was filming, because I'm only thinking of how Max would think of things.
Absolutely. My next question has to do with what you said in the beginning of the interview, or like second question about the like the book to the show type thing about like you have to understand the world and everything. And I feel like how you understand the world in a lot of ways, whether it's during production or before, is asking questions, right? And conversations that
Yeah.
kind of happen. And I'm wondering for you, do the conversations with, the crew, directors, showrunners, cast, are they all at some point all storytelling questions? Because the end of the end game is to make like a story. That is the end goal,
Yeah.
right? So are
Yeah.
there different conversations? Are they very similar conversations in regards to like cast, crew, production design? I'm curious about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think because for this show, a lot of the questions actually come down to a few different things. And
Yeah.
I think it's different on every show but the lore and the myth and the kind of rules of this world are quite complex.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times I'll read a scene or someone else will read a scene and the writers have done something, and it makes sense within the rules of the world as they know it, but not necessarily as I know it. And so it's like, how does this work? Because I thought this happened if this happened, but actually, no, it means this is this. And so getting all of that kind of concrete for everyone normally is our basis.
Yeah.
And honestly, with the names in this show, the character names, the first step is just making sure everyone's saying the names the same way.
Absolutely.
And then once you really get into the storytelling of it, you're often talking to the costume designer and the hair and makeup people, and everyone's trying to build, because there's so many characters and it's so sprawling, a distinctive look, a distinctive style, and a distinctive kind of personality for every character that will carry them through the entire season and also tell their story as much as possible. So it does always come down to storytelling, like you said.
Yeah.
It always comes down to making sure that everything we're doing is tracking through the show, tracking through the lore that the show is set up, but also tracking through the lore that the books are set up as best as possible. When we've broken away from the books, making sure we understand why, I'm sure the actors understand why,
Yep.
and why we're doing what we're doing, why the changes have been made.
A show like this, obviously, like Wheel of Time, the books, medieval times will always be something that kind of like comes to mind first, right? But is there
Yeah.
anything else specifically that, like, even before like signing up, like shooting the show, right? Like, was there what came to your mind, like word wise or like concept wise, with Wheel of Time specifically? Besides it being kind of medieval, did it feel like did you think about like the whole kind of like power struggles and everything? And like, I'm just wondering,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I think the word that we actually use a lot outside of just the setting is balance.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, kind of the thesis of the books and the thesis of the show is that good and evil have to coexist. There's not just good and evil. And if there's no balance, then everything sort of gets out of whack.
Yep.
And it's not just with good and evil, but it's with gender, it's with power, it's with all of these different things. And so that was sort of like, that's sort of not necessarily when I signed up, but like when I became a part of it, it was always thinking about, okay, how do we make sure, like at the beginning of the series, the way the books have done it and the way we've done it is the world is sort of flipped on its head, or at least how we think of the world. And it's a matriarchal society, not a patriarchal society. but we also want to make sure that we don't just say, oh, everything's wonderful when women run the world, because that's not necessarily going to be true.
Yep.
And so the pitfalls of that, and making sure that everything feels like we're telling a story that basically says everything has to be in balance, or we all suffer.
Absolutely.
And so that's the interesting thematic thing I always pull out of it.
No, that's interesting. And then last question before we wrap up. I mean, I know the answer to this question is you try not to do this because as an actor, you want to be in the moment and like focus on your character and do your job, right? Like bring the page to life essentially, right? And do it justice. Are you ever conscious of the audience member watching Wheel of Time while you're making it? Or is that something that happens a little bit after you wrap, so to speak?
I think I think as an actor, you have to be very like unconscious of anything that's happening other than what your character's doing.
Yeah.
Because the minute you start thinking about how something's going to be received, you're doing a terrible job.
Yep.
To be honest, as an actor, because you should be in the moment. With that being said, you're always kind of thinking about it too. Like, I can't deny that, like, when I see a costume, I'm thinking, oh, is someone going to think I look good in this, or is someone going to think I look bad in this? You know, when you see, you know, like, you think about
that's a great way to simplify it too. You know, right?
Yeah. You know, you're like, oh, I want people to think I look good. Yeah. Like, you know, I want people to be flat. I don't want people to think I look like shit. So yes, you do think about it.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Season 3 episodes rolling out on Prime Video for Wheel of Time. Taylor, great chatting with you, man. Thanks so much for your time.
Really nice chatting with you too. Yeah, lovely to talk.
Instagram is just your name if people want to keep up to date with everything.
It's Taylor Napier 89.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, this has been Pop Turn at youtube.com/PopTurn for previous episodes. Until next time, this is Taylor Napier and PD Beats signing off.
Thank you for tuning in to Popturnative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popturnative on YouTube.
This has been an Autograph Communications production.